The backyard dinner surprise. The warm summer evening had settled comfortably over the backyard as the Thompson family gathered for dinner. It was a perfect evening where the laughter of 12-year-old cousins, Emma and Max, echoed off the trees, mixing with the soft chirping of crickets and the glow of fireflies. Grandfather Thompson, a sprightly old man with silver hair and twinkling eyes, sat at the head of the long wooden table. He loved these family dinners, especially when the grandkids were around during summer vacation. The backyard was their kingdom, a place where stories were shared and little adventures unfolded. Tonight, like every other evening, promised to be memorable. "I tell you, Emma, that was the biggest fish I've ever seen," Max boasted, stretching his arms as wide as they could go. He had been fishing earlier with their grandfather, and as usual, his tale of the day's events had grown larger than life. Emma rolled her eyes and giggled. "Oh, really? And what happened next, Max? Did it take you for a swim?" Max crossed his arms indignantly. "No, it got away, but only because I didn't want to scare it." "Right, Grandpa." Grandfather Thompson chuckled, setting down a plate of grilled corn. "Oh, yes, the legendary fish. It's been evading Max for years now. I've seen it myself. Must be the size of a whale by now." The three of them burst into laughter. The backyard dinner was filled with simple joys: roasted vegetables, a pitcher of freshly squeezed lemonade, and the smell of sizzling burgers. Above them, the sky was painted with hues of pink and orange as the sun slowly dipped below the horizon. As they ate, they chatted about the day's events, from Max's exaggerated fishing tales to Emma's adventure in the garden, where she'd tried to save a ladybug that had, according to her, accidentally flown into a spider web. "You're turning into quite the hero," Max teased, munching on his burger. Emma swatted at him playfully, but her grin was wide. "At least I don't make up fish stories." Grandfather Thompson, who had been quietly observing them, suddenly leaned forward, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Speaking of stories," he said, his eyes gleaming, "did I ever tell you too about the time a skunk wandered into our backyard?" Both cousins perked up. This was how all great evenings with Grandpa began, with a good story. "No way," Max exclaimed. "Tell us," Emma urged. Grandfather leaned back in his chair, stroking his chin thoughtfully. "It was a night much like tonight, a warm summer evening. We were having a backyard dinner just like this one, when suddenly, a skunk appeared out of nowhere." But before he could continue, there was a sudden rustling in the bushes behind them. "What was that?" Emma whispered, her eyes wide. Max dropped his burger mid-bite and stared at the bushes. The sound grew louder, and the leaves shook violently, as though something was moving toward them. "Don't tell me it's a skunk for real," Max squeaked, suddenly recalling their grandfather's story. He scooted a little closer to Emma, who did the same. Grandfather Thompson, though, didn't seem the least bit alarmed. Now, no need to panic," he said with a calm smile, but there was a hint of mischief in his voice. The rustling stopped, and for a moment, there was complete silence. The cousins held their breath. Then, out of the bushes sprang their unexpected guest, a small, scruffy dog with dirt-covered fur and big, floppy ears. Max and Emma gasped in unison, their earlier fear replaced by curiosity. The dog shook itself off, sending a spray of dirt and twigs flying. "Well, would you look at that?" Grandfather said, chuckling. "Seems like we have a dinner crasher." The dog, noticing the food on the table, trotted over with a wagging tail and hopeful eyes. Emma was the first to break the silence. He's adorable. But where did he come from?" Max, who had already forgotten about his fishing tail, jumped up excitedly. "Maybe he's lost. Or maybe he's a superhero dog in disguise." Grandfather Thompson chuckled, watching as the dog sat obediently by Emma's feet, its tail wagging furiously. "I don't know about superheroes, but it does look like someone's hungry." Without missing a beat, Max tore off a piece of his burger and held it out to the dog. The scruffy little animal sniffed at it before wolfing it down in seconds. Then, with its tail still wagging, the dog let out a happy bark, which caused both cousins to erupt into giggles. "He's so funny," Emma said, rubbing the dog's head. "Can we keep him, Grandpa?" Grandfather Thompson smiled warmly. Well, we'll have to see if he belongs to someone first. But for tonight, it looks like we've got ourselves an extra dinner guest. The dog, as if understanding it was now part of the family, made itself comfortable under the table, its nose occasionally sniffing for more food. As the evening continued, the cousins couldn't stop laughing. The dog's antics, from chasing fireflies to sneaking bits of food from their plates, had them in stitches. At one point, the dog even tried to steal a whole ear of corn off the table, causing Max to dive across the table in a heroic and messy attempt to save the food. Emma nearly fell out of her chair laughing. "I think we should name him," Max declared, once he'd recovered from his corn-saving mission. "What about Buster?" Emma tilted her head, considering it. I like Buster. But what if he already has a name?" Grandfather Thompson, who had been watching the joyful chaos with a grin, stood up. "Tell you what, tomorrow we'll check around the neighborhood to see if anyone's missing their dog. If no one claims him, well," he trailed off, winking at the cousins. "Does that mean we can keep him?" Emma asked, her eyes wide with excitement. "We'll see," Grandfather said, though his smile suggested that he was already quite fond of their scruffy guest. The rest of the evening was filled with even more laughter and joy. As the stars began to twinkle in the sky, the cousins and their new furry friend lay on the grass, staring up at the constellations. "I'll never forget this day," Max said softly, scratching Buster behind the ears. "This has been the best dinner ever." "Agreed," Emma replied. "And who knows? Maybe tomorrow we'll find out Buster is actually a superhero dog." Grandfather Thompson chuckled from his chair. "You two certainly know how to make an ordinary evening extraordinary." As the night drew to a close, they all headed back into the house, the cousins whispering excitedly about their new friend, and Grandfather Thompson smiling at the memory of another perfect summer night. But just before they closed the door, they heard a soft bark. "Looks like Buster's already at home," Grandfather said, letting the little dog trot in after them. And with that, the backyard dinner came to an end, but the memories and the laughter would stay with them forever. Epilogue. The next morning, as promised, the cousins and Grandfather Thompson searched the neighborhood for any signs of a lost dog. They even posted flyers and asked around, but no one came forward to claim Buster. So, by the end of the week, it was decided Buster was officially part of the Thompson family. And while they never did find out where he came from, Max and Emma were convinced that he was, in fact, a superhero in disguise. After all, who else could turn a simple backyard dinner into a night they'd never forget?